Hi guys, we are going to start our calendar grid observations for our number corner. In class we have the calendar grid on the wall and it shows that this is the month of September, and we have all of those cards flipped over upside down like this, and we flip those over and we look for what patterns do we see, what connections can we make, and we get our brain going mathematically. Well, right now what I would like you to do is get your math notebook. Now you have not started writing in a math notebook unless you started to use one for your Unit 1 pre-assessment. If you did start to use one of your new notebooks for this year for your pre-assessment, you can use that one. You can see that I just labeled it with a marker on the front, Math 2020 to 2021. That way, if we start in another notebook, you'll know the difference between which one you're in, and you won't run into trouble with losing assignments. Remember, in 5th grade, we're working on strategies to keep us organized that you will be able to use in future grades, even if a teacher doesn't tell you the way of setting up your organization. So here I'm guiding you. Please go get your math notebook, pause the video, and come right back over. Okay, so this was the where I was writing for my pre-assessment. I'm just gonna go to my very next page. Now you'll notice in class and in the videos, I'm only gonna write on the front side of my papers, but that's because I'm showing it to you guys, and when I write on my papers, the ink will sometimes go through when I'm using my pens, so that helps it to be easier for you to read on a camera screen. So I'm going to just write on one side, but you should absolutely be using your pencil. Please do not use pens or markers for these tasks. This way we can work with our space a little more clearly and neatly. And I'm going to go ahead and get started by titling this page. Now this page is going to be the beginning of our calendar grid observations. So that's what we're going to write. We're going to title this Calendar Grid Observations. Please go ahead and title that paper with me. Now, we always write our dates in here as well, but this calendar grid is going to go for the whole month of September. We're just going to use this page. So what I'm going to do for that then is I will just write up here, September. And class, whenever I am writing in my math notebook, you are writing in your math notebook. So we want to make sure we're doing a good job to be responsible while also doing our very best to practice the ideas. And when we're writing things down, that often keeps our brain a little bit more engaged and focused, and gives us something to go back to when we want to look at this learning later. If at any time I go too quickly for you, don't worry. The video is a great resource because you can just pause it. You can back it up and listen to another part again, or just unpause it when you're ready to continue. So you should have September calendar grid observations. So I have my very first card for number corner this month, and you can be thinking to yourself, what were some of the patterns you remembered seeing in 4th grade? What area do you think we're going to begin number corner with? What math skills? So go ahead and make a quiet prediction, and then I will go ahead and flip it over and you can let me know if you were right. This month we are starting with this image. So I'm going to zoom in on it a wee bit so that you can see it up close. All right. What I would want you to do here is make some observations. Now, you're not with me right now to give me feedback, but we can check in together on this tomorrow. So we're noticing a couple things. We see our date down here. We see our color in the background. We see 2 different squares. You may be noticing that there are dots and dashes behind the squares, and it seems like there are additional smaller squares there as well. And if you're looking, you'll notice there is some kind of a picture in the center of each of these squares. Now, what I'm doing right now would model the kind of things you guys would be sharing in class. So anytime I'm doing this, make sure you pause and think of your ideas before I continue with sharing the observations you might have made in class. So if you notice, we have 2 coins here, and these coins are actually the coin quarter. Now with these quarters, there's a couple things that I would want us to take a look at. What do you think of when you think of this money piece, a quarter? Can you think of what its value would be? Can you compare its value to other values? Do you see the boxes behind it? Do those have anything to do with the money you see as well? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and continue. And this is the part where you would be able to share with me some of the ideas that you have. We are going to label this over on the side. This is calendar day number 1, so September 1st, but we're just starting together. We'll do a couple in a row right now. I'm going to put the number 1 over here because that's the first calendar grid marker that we're looking at. And we're going to think of if we were going to write this as an equation. An equation would be a number sentence that has an answer. So it's a number sentence that is solved. We're thinking right now, what kind of equation could we write to match this image? So go ahead and jot down what you think would be an equation that would match this image. Pause while you think, and then press play again when you are ready to continue. All right, if you've pressed play, the first thing you might have noticed here is just the value. When we think about a quarter, we are thinking about 25 cents. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. 25 cents. That's often how we see it. I'm going to show you another way as well, but let's start with that 25 cents. And I notice this addition symbol here. So 25 cents plus, I have another quarter there, so it's another 25 cents, and that equals 50 cents. Okay, we wrote down our 25 cents plus 25 cents equals 50 cents, but I told you there was another way we could also write that. For this first day, I'm going to go ahead and stretch it out. I'm actually going to use 2 lines. In class, we would usually put this all onto one, but I want to make sure you can see it on our screen, so we'll zoom back out just a little bit. And instead of writing the 25 cents, I'm thinking of writing it like this. Because this is how it would show up on a price tag, or on a receipt, or maybe on a menu. So the way I would read this, I could either be thinking about it as my 25 cents, or I could think 25 hundredths plus 25 hundredths equals 50 hundredths. So there are 2 ways that we could show what's in this first calendar grid marker. The next thing I'm thinking about is that 25 cents, but I want to think about it in a different way. Well, 25 cents is 1 quarter, and let's see, if I had enough coins, enough change to make $1, $1 would be 100 cents. And so with 100 cents, I'm thinking about this quarter now, and I'm thinking about it now like this. 25 hundredths plus 25 hundredths equals 50 hundredths. Now, if you notice how I just read that mathematically, I read this as 25 hundredths plus 25 hundredths equals 50 hundredths. Many of you might have looked at it like a price tag and thought 25 cents plus 25 cents equals 50 cents. Down here, I was thinking about that 25 cents compared to the rest of the whole dollar. So now I have 25 hundredths plus 25 hundredths because there's 100 cents in the whole dollar. If I had all of the cents in the whole dollar, I would have 100 out of 100 cents, and that would equal 1 whole dollar. Here, it looks like we have 25 hundredths plus 25 hundredths, and together that makes 50 hundredths. The other way that I was thinking about this before we move on to marker number 2 is just by the value of this coin, we were calling this a quarter. If we're calling this a quarter, we know a fraction that goes along with that. I'm going to go ahead and write this fraction, 1/4, because when I see that, I am thinking of 1/4 or 1/4 of the whole thing. And in this case, the whole thing is the whole dollar. So 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 2/4. I could back it up and try reading that again, and I could say it like this: 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 2/4. And now we'll recognize that 2 is half of 4. And if 2 is half of 4, that means 2/4 is equivalent or has the same value as 1/2, 1/2. So that's how we are working on our calendar grid observations for this month. So I'm going to scoot this number 1 out of the way. If you need to see it, just drag the slider bar back on the video. I'm going to write the number 2 here, and I'm going to get ready to show you this number 2 calendar marker. With this number 2 calendar marker, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and show you what's on the other side. But you go ahead and make a prediction first. Pause it if you need to. Do you have an idea? What do you think this is going to be? Here we go. This is our next marker in our calendar grid. So think about what you notice. Think about what you see. Pause the video, wait until you have an idea, knowing that we're going to end up writing some equations to represent it. Just make some observations first. What do you notice? And then we'll continue. Okay, so if you've had a chance to take a look at this, I think the first thing you might be noticing is, well, we're looking at a clock now. We were just looking at money, but now we're looking at time. Okay, so let's compare what we know and see with this clock. And we're thinking about an equation. How would we write this? Well, okay, so I'm going to look at what's shaded. That's what I'm going to focus on. I know that this whole clock represents time. This shaded part represents a different amount of time. Let me think. If I was in school and I was trying to work on an assignment and the teacher told me that I had from the minute hand here to the minute hand here, I would have 15 minutes. And there are 60 minutes in the whole hour. So I think I want to go ahead and write for this 15 minutes plus 15 minutes equals 30 minutes. So that's the first way I wanted to represent it. Okay, I need to do a quick check. Are you writing too? Remember, when I'm writing in my math notebook, you are writing in yours. So now with this 15 minutes plus 15 minutes equals 30 minutes, we just talked about how many minutes are in the whole hour. So I am also going to go right underneath this, and I'm going to label it as 15 minutes, but out of the whole 60 minutes in the hour. 60 minutes equals 1 whole hour, so that's my denominator, my number on the bottom. 15 sixtieths plus 15 sixtieths equals 30 sixtieths. That's my first equation that I'm going to use for this problem. All right. Then I was thinking, do you see these numbers on the outside? Those are the things that stand out to us the most, right? We go from 1 to 12. Well, that means there's 12 numbers in the whole clock face. So I'm going to come over here and make that my new denominator. So out of 12. Well, think of how many of those numbers are shaded right now. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to make the 3 my numerator. The part of the clock that is shaded right here is 3 out of 12. 3/12 of the clock face is shaded. And over here, same thing. We have 3 out of 12 on the clock face is shaded. So I will write 3/12 plus 3/12 equals 6/12. That's how many numbers all together out of the 12 that equals the whole hour. Make sure I'm not going off the page for you here with the video. And let's think. Another thing I want us to think about. Well, you know what? We'll come back to it with a different one. These are some pretty good equations to get us started. So I'm going to go, if you had another one, that is fantastic, and I can't wait to hear more about it. I'm going to go to calendar marker number 3. So with our calendar marker number 3, here it is. Go ahead and make your prediction about what you think it will be. And remember, we're looking for equations to go along with what we see. What do you think is going to be on the other side of this card when I flip it in 3, 2, 1? Here we go. Whoosh. Think about it. What do you observe? What do you notice? Okay. Can you recognize that this looks the same as calendar grid marker number 1? We still have that same yellow background. Looks like we went back to some money pieces. The money pieces do look different, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that. And I'd like you to look and see if you can tell what the value of those money pieces are. Okay, so if you weren't sure what the value of these money pieces are just by looking at it, one of the other things we can look at are the boxes behind. Think about how many columns you see. I see 5. Think about how many rows you see. I see 10. So if you have 10 rows of 5 columns, how many boxes do you have there? And that'll tell you what your money piece is. Boys and girls, if you looked real close, if you were here in class, let's see how close I can get to the camera with still having it being clear. All right. Oh, there it is. Can you read it right at the very bottom of the coin? You see that it says $50. All right, so since this is a $50, think what equations would you write for this? So I'm gonna let you think about that. Pause for a second, see what equations you can come up with. I'm gonna back out our camera. Okay, well, let's start with the value of the money. You might have started somewhere else, but since you're not here to let me know, we're gonna start with that. This is a $50. That means it has a value of 50 cents. Well, if this is worth 50 cents and this is worth 50 cents, I would have 100 cents. But we also know that this 100 cents would be written differently. We could also write it like this: $1. One whole dollar. The next thing I was thinking was if we were going to represent this as a fraction, on the last problem we were thinking about it like this. We thought about it like 50 cents out of 100 cents in the whole dollar. So if this is 50 cents out of 100 cents and this is 50 cents out of 100 cents, I'll use that addition symbol right here. Write that down. And I am going to go ahead and add those up. 50 hundredths plus 50 hundredths equals 100 hundredths, which again for us is one whole dollar because we are talking about money. And the other thing you might have thought of, same as over here, you might have been thinking about this as 1/2 of a dollar plus 1/2 of a dollar equals 2/2 of a dollar, which is again the whole dollar. I hope this is, sorry I went off the page there for you. I hope this is starting to make sense, the idea of where we're going with this. It looks like we have had money and we have had clock fractions. And let's go ahead and just do one more calendar grid marker. Here is our 4th calendar grid marker of September. So make your predictions for what do you think is coming next. There it is. Did you guess that it might be a clock going back to time? I bet some of you did. All right, well, let's look at the value here. I'm going to write my number 4 down. This is my 4th calendar grid marker. So remember, when I'm writing, you are writing as well. And if I go too fast, it is no problem. You just go ahead and pause that video and we'll be all set to go. So we have the whole hour here, the whole hour. And how much of it is shaded? Can you tell that half of that hour is shaded? If half of that hour is shaded, you might think about it like this: 1/2 of that hour plus another half of an hour. Half of this clock face is also shaded. If we put both of these halves together, we would have 2 halves, which equals 1. Wait a second. Do you see what's going on here? I just wrote this fraction equation to represent these clock faces. But look at this equation that I just wrote to represent those money pieces. I'm noticing that we have something that's called equivalent, and I know you worked on that already last year. So we are working with some equivalent fractions here. So let's also look at the numbers on the clock face. We have those numbers 1 through 12. Well, this clock face is shaded up to the 6 out of the 12 numbers on the clock face, and this clock is shaded up to the 6 out of the 12 numbers on the clock face. Altogether, you would have 12 of the numbers out of 12 of the numbers, and that would equal 1 whole clock face. And we're going to pause there for today. So I hope that this is helping you know what we're going to do to get started with our September calendar grid observations.